I think this whole series of webinars that the RT has initiated has come in very timely, and some of us were feeling so lost all by ourselves. And webinars on very pertinent themes give us an opportunity to connect with other professionals in the field, and it really keeps you engaged with the whole issue of how education should be looked at during the COVID times. Today's theme is close to my heart, and I do think everyone who's here feels very concerned about girls' education. If the issue of girls' education seems a stubborn issue, in spite of all the efforts, it does not. The gender equality and gender equity seems very, very elusive. If I have to recollect a little, it is the 1986 National Policy of Education which brought girls' education to the center stage. And it was not just girls' education, but the whole girls' empowerment discourse was also integral to girls' education. And that was a real kind of a frog leap in the way girls' education was viewed and the issues addressed through various strategies. However, in spite of all the efforts that went in over the last 2-3 decades, what we see about the dropout rates or the transition rates of girls from primary to elementary and elementary to secondary education and secondary to higher education tells us that we really have not addressed the issue of girls' education as we should. Girls, particularly girls from marginalized communities, have difficulty in realizing their right to education in spite of best efforts and in all normal circumstances. So when we come to education and emergencies, and this is what I think the current COVID pandemic, it's an emergency. And literature on any emergencies and experiences with emergencies show us that any emergencies, be it natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, or man-made disasters like war, conflicts, and now pandemics, really magnify the whole issues around girls' education. And girls seem to be suffering way more than boys. It's not that boys don't suffer. Marginalized boys are equally impacted. But when we compare the two, girls seem to be at a disadvantage. The disadvantage that they have due to structural inequity and patriarchy and systemic flaws in the way education reaches children, all those disadvantages kind of come to forefront during emergency times. And girls are further pushed into either they drop out of school or they are unable to attend school, and learning is definitely impacted. Any emergency affects girls in two ways. There is a direct impact where girls there's a gender-based violence, girls are trafficked many a times during emergencies. There is violence and abuse against girls. So and they're withdrawn from school, they receive less nutrition. So these are things that really happen to girls during any emergencies. And this is no different case. In the long term, what we have realized is that the lack of livelihood and the lack of resources and income within the marginalized families further pushes the girls into a state of less nutrition, no access to school, more household work, more pushed into a condition of child labor. And all these various circumstances has an impact, as I said earlier, on the right to education of girls. So having said, and with this background, I think more will be said by our eminent panelists over here. It's a pleasure to introduce all three of them. And they are eminent people, eminent professionals who have worked very hard in the field of girls' education, and they are real champions from the heart on the whole issue of gender equity. So I do welcome Professor Namita, Ranganathan, Jyotsana and Suman Sachdeva on this panel. The format that we will follow is that every speaker gets about 10 minutes to speak, and they we all four of us had a discussion, and we agreed, along with Amrishji and Srijita, that each of the panelists highlights the impact that COVID is going to have on girls' education in short term and in long term both. And later, each one of them expands on a theme that is most relevant to girls' education. We've tried to discuss and come with three different themes that the three panelists talk on, so that there is a less, we don't have too much of overlap and repetitions. With this background, let me introduce the panelists. Jyotsana Jha, Director of Center of Budget and Policy Studies since 2011. She has a PhD in economics from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Earlier, she was the education advisor for Commonwealth Secretariat in London, where she worked for 5 years. Jyotsana has been engaged with policymakers, administrators, research at both national and international level. Welcome, Jyotsana. After Jyotsana, we will have Suman Sachdeva on the panel. Suman currently is working as education specialist with UNICEF, and her area of work includes social inclusion and diversity. She is PhD from Delhi University, Central Institute of Education. She has two master's degree, one in education and one in philosophy. Earlier, she was the technical director for girls' education at CARE. Welcome, Suman. And Professor Namita Ranganathan is a professor at Central Institute of Education in Delhi University since 1986, as I understand. She too is a doctorate from, she has a PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, and her specialization include mental health, guidance and counseling, gender psychology, and girls' education. She's a teacher educator and a very, very popular teacher in her department. Welcome, Namita.
Thank you.
With those introductions, I invite Jyotsana to begin the discussion. Jyotsana, you have 10 minutes, and I hope Jyotsana will expand on the impact of COVID on girls' education and then proceed to kind of give us an overview as to what kind of strategies we need to adopt so that girls' education does not suffer as much. Jyotsana, over to you.